This is BBC News, the headlines. The Israeli military suffers its heaviest losses since it launched its ground offensive in Gaza, with 24 soldiers killed. The UK and the US carry out more strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will address the Commons at any moment. Votes are cast in the New Hampshire primary. Nikki Haley is challenging Donald Trump for the Republican nomination.
Rebuild. When does the Secretary of State plan to give the next update on the progress being made with that project?
The latest round of UK and allied strikes against Houthi targets was designed to send the clearest possible message to the rebels.
He and I are. I will meet the honourable gentleman to go through his plans, because I know how carefully he has campaigned for this important new asset in his constituency.
Catherine Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the early hours of Friday morning, I arrived at the Royal Lancaster Infirmary with my sick son in an ambulance, and the nurse who was treating him, as we walked past trolleys in the corridor, said, "Our A&E is too small. We were promised a new hospital 4 years ago."
Yep.
Roll out the Romulan! Roll out the Romulan! Where the fuck's the Romulan, man? What's this wee talking head saying?
To hear from Rishi Sunak, but it seems we may also be hearing from the House of Commons Speaker.
Yes, the House of Commons Speaker has sort of indicated that he really does think that MPs should be briefed, that they should get notice if there is going to be continuing action. So I think the Speaker would distinguish between what are going to be, if there are going to be limited airstrikes, between that and something which is involving far more full-scale British involvement. So I'm not entirely...
The arbitrators of truth.
Hey, government, you know, if it's going to go further than this, you need to keep us on side.
So do we know what we expect to hear from Rishi Sunak? That I'm just keeping a close eye in the House and has taken his seat, Rob.
But please do, and shut me up instantly, Lucy, because I can't see the monitor. I think we know exactly what he's going to say. We've already heard it from the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, and that is that this is the UK and its allies, the United States and a few others, sending, as they would see it, a message to the Houthis that, look, you know, we will not tolerate attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea. Now, do the United States and the United Kingdom
international shipping.
This is necessarily
it's British,
going to make the
American,
Houthis stop?
and
Well,
Israeli.
the action they took 10 days or so ago hasn't made them stop. So I think
Rob, I'm going to interrupt you. Let's just listen in to the House Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle.
Here, here, here.
Right, we now come to the statement. I call the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At my order overnight, the RAF engaged in a second wave of strikes against Houthi military targets in Yemen. We did so because we continue to see, including in intelligence, an ongoing and imminent threat from the Houthis to UK commercial and military vessels and to those of our partners in the Red Sea and wider region. I told the House last week that we would not hesitate to respond if the acts continue in order to protect innocent lives and preserve the freedom of navigation. And that is what we have done. We acted alongside the United States with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands. We acted on the same basis as the 11th of January, fully in line with international law, in self-defence and in response to a persistent threat. And as with the first wave, the strikes were limited to carefully selected targets with maximum care taken to protect civilian lives. Mr. Speaker, attempting to counter every Houthi attack after it has been launched is simply not sustainable. We have already shot down dozens of missiles and drones targeted at civilian vessels and at the Royal Navy. And the Houthis have conducted at least 12 further attacks on shipping since the 11th of January, including just last night, shortly before our strikes were conducted. So we acted to further degrade their ability to mount such attacks. Last week, I gave the House our initial assessment of the first wave of strikes. Since then, we have seen further evidence that they were successful in degrading the Houthis' military capability. Last night, we hit 2 military sites just north of Sana'a, each containing multiple specific targets, which the Houthis used to support their attacks on shipping. And Mr. Speaker, I want to be very clear. We are not seeking a confrontation. We urge the Houthis and those who enable them to stop these illegal and unacceptable attacks. But if necessary, the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defence. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. Inaction is also a choice. With that in mind, Mr. Speaker, and given the persistent nature of the threat, it was important to update to the House again today. I listened carefully to honourable and right honourable members last week, and so we will give the House a chance for a full debate on our broader approach in the Red Sea tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, we took extensive steps to address this threat to international security before taking military action. We launched Operation Prosperity Guardian in December with over 20 other countries. The international community issued repeated statements on the 1st of December, the 19th of December, the 3rd of January, the 12th of January, condemning the attacks and urging the Houthis to desist. On the 10th of January, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution demanding that they stop the attacks. And I think it is important to note also that the internationally recognised government of Yemen has also condemned the Houthis for their actions, accusing them of creating a conflict for propaganda, serving only their own selfish ends. Mr. Speaker, as we saw in the House last week, members are rightly keen to hear how this situation could be brought to an end. The answer must include the vital right to self-defence when we're attacked. But that is only one part of our wider response, which I want to say more about today. First, we are increasing our diplomatic engagement because we recognise the deep concerns about and the complexities of the current situation. I spoke to President Biden about these issues last night. The Foreign Secretary will be in the region in the coming days, and he met his Iranian counterpart last week. He made clear that they must cease supplying the Houthis with weapons and intelligence and use their influence to stop Houthi attacks. Second, we must end the illegal flow of arms to the Houthi militia. We have intercepted weapon shipments in the region before, including components of the very missiles used by the Houthis today. This brings home the importance of maritime security in the region, and that includes working closely with our allies and partners to disrupt and deter the supply of weapons and components. Third, we are going to use the most effective means at our disposal to cut off the Houthis' financial resources where they are used to fund these attacks. We are working closely with the United States on this and plan to announce new sanction measures in the coming days. Fourth, we need to keep helping the people of Yemen, who have suffered so terribly as a result of the country's civil war. We will continue to deliver humanitarian aid and support a negotiated peace in that conflict, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because we need to show the people of Yemen that we have no quarrel with them, as the Yemeni government itself understands. So, Mr. Speaker, this is our strategy, and we will keep all other tools under close review as well. Mr. Speaker, I repeat that there is no link between our actions of self-defence in the Red Sea and the situation in Israel and Gaza.
There fucking is, man! The Houthis are coming out and saying it. The Houthis have came out and said the attacks will stop if the war in Gaza stops. The Iranians, who is backing up the Houthis with all their guns, bombs and bullets, has came out and said if the fucking war in Gaza stops, these attacks in the Red Sea will stop. I heard one of the talking heads, I don't know which station it was on earlier, pointing out the fact, which nobody wants to point out, Russian, Chinese, everybody else's shipping is allowed to go through there unmolested. It's only British and American and Israeli shipping that is getting hurt. And the Russian oil tanker that got hurt was due to bad intelligence. Make of that what you will. But what pish? And this is the like you again, you wouldn't be able to stand up in the Parliament, the home of free speech and all that shite, and go, here mate, you're talking pish, you're lying. You're not allowed to say that. That's unacceptable language.
Clear that those here at home who glorify the Houthis' attacks are glorifying terrorism, plain and simple. Yeah. They will be met with a zero-tolerance approach. Now, all of that said, Mr. Speaker, I would like to address the situation in Israel and Gaza directly because it remains at the forefront of members' minds. President Biden and I again discussed this yesterday, and he shares my deep concerns about the situation, about the terrible suffering and loss of civilian lives. So together we are working to establish a new aid route through the port of Ashdod. And Mr. Speaker, the UK wants to see an end to the fighting in Gaza as soon as possible. We are calling for an immediate humanitarian pause to get aid in and hostages out as a vital step towards building a sustainable, permanent ceasefire without a return to destruction, fighting and loss of life. But to achieve that, Hamas must agree to the release of all hostages. They can no longer be in charge of Gaza. The threat from Hamas terror and rocket attacks must end. And an agreement must be in place for the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza to provide governance services and security. That is the pathway to peace that should unite the whole House. And I believe we are also united in support of a two-state solution. Mr. Speaker, through all the complexity of the current situation, our principles hold firm. Resolute in the face of threats, compassionate in support of those in need, and determined in maintaining stability, security, and the rule of law. That is what our allies and partners have come to expect from the United Kingdom. That is what we stand for, and I commend this statement to the House.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Prime Minister for advance copy of his statement. Labour said we will judge further action on the Houthis on a case-by-case basis.
So much plastic surgery.
So let me be clear, we back this targeted action to reinforce maritime security in the Red Sea. The Houthi attacks must stop. They are designed to destabilise us, so we must stand united and strong. They bring danger to ordinary civilians working hard at sea, so we must protect them. And they aim to disrupt the flow of goods, food and medicines, so we must not let them go unaddressed. The professionalism and bravery of those serving on HMS Diamond and flying RAF Typhoons are both totally accepted and completely remarkable. Without them, Britain cannot be a force for good in the world.
It's always good to see a difference
Mr. Speaker,
in the
these are, of course, the
House
second
of
set of
Parliament,
strikes that the UK has participated in. And the stated aim of the first set was to deter and degrade Houthi capability. But we now know that their attacks have continued. So while we do not question the justification for action, it is right that the House hears more about their effectiveness. Labour, of course, recognises that strikes can be used to reduce threat without eliminating it, and we recognise that the military action taken is just one component of a wider diplomatic strategy. But nonetheless, I would ask the Prime Minister to set out his confidence that these strikes will be effective.
Remember, this was the guy in charge of getting to the bottom of the Jimmy Savile shit. Then, because he's great job he done, he was given it wasn't a knighthood, he's a sirhood, or whatever, he was made a sir, I think it's Sir Keir Starmer. So how good would it be if he had a stammer?
In reducing Houthi capabilities. And while, of course, we understand the clear legal basis for these actions, as the situation has evolved, can the Prime Minister now commit to restating and republishing the government's legal position? Mr. Speaker, alongside the UK and the US, other countries have provided non-operational support for these strikes and maritime protection in the Red Sea. Many more support the United Nations Security Council resolution that utterly condemns the Houthi attacks.
Right, that's enough of that pish. I wanted to catch what Sunak was saying, and see if there was going to be Iran flung into the mix, but he laid off the Iran rhetoric. I'm off out to brave another storm and forget about all this pish for a while, as you do. But stay tuned. I'm going to do a live show tonight around 9 o'clockish, half 9. I do declare. Alrighty, BoobTubes, get it. We got it. Good. Remember, thumbs it up if you do enjoy these little shindigs. Catchies, no cats or cheese were harmed in the filming.
Clips.
And remember, citizens, always subscribe. Hit the notification bell as well. And $19.95 plus shipping and handling will keep you out of hell.